To keep yourself updated, subscribe to Indigo Learn and click the bell icon and download our app OneFin to start learning on the go.
Friends, how much ever important it is to know the value of supply, it is equally important to know the amount of tax, and it is much more important to know how do we pay the tax. Correct, my dear friends? So now, payment of tax is not just something like go into somewhere called GST office, stand in the line, stand in the queue and make the payment of tax. It's not really like that. And friends, we all know that interesting discussion that we have a concept of credit mechanism which we can use. That is already what we learned, that IGST can be used for IGST, CGST, SGST. CGST can be used for CGST and IGST. SGST can be used for SGST and IGST. But we can't use CGST for SGST, SGST for CGST. This fundamental point we all know. Now, let's say for a second, let's take an example. Let's say there is one person called Mr. Tom. Mr. Tom. There is one person called Mr. Tom. This particular person called Tom, let's say he is liable to pay certain amount of 1 lakh to government. How much Tom is liable to pay? Around 1 lakh Tom is liable to pay to the government. This particular person called Tom has an output tax liability of 1 lakh which he has to pay to the government. When he has to pay 1 lakh output liability to the government, this particular person got input tax credit. I repeat one more time. When Tom has to pay 1 lakh output tax to the government, Tom has got some input tax credit. Let's say out of the 1 lakh what he has to pay, he has already got some input tax credit of, let's say, some 60,000. How much credit he has? 60,000. 1 lakh he is liable to pay to the government. 1 lakh he is liable to pay to the government, and he has a credit of 60,000. So tell me friends, out of this 1 lakh, 60,000 will use it as credit. Balance what he has to pay is only 40,000. This 40,000, how do we pay? That is what we are going to talk in this topic called payment of tax. Did we understand, my dear friends? So what is payment of tax all about? How do we pay a particular tax which we are required to pay to the government? Let me explain some wonderful concept which we need to understand. Now what GST law has done is, GST law has developed one portal, has developed one website known as gst.gov.in. They developed a website called gst.gov.in. Anything and everything related to the GST is done in the website called www.gst.gov.in. Right? Now, in this particular website called gst.gov.in, whenever a person logins using his user ID and password, law has given something known as 2 ledgers and 1 register. I repeat one more time, law gave 2 ledgers and 1 register. The 2 ledgers what they gave are, the 2 ledgers is classified into electronic credit ledger, electronic cash ledger. I repeat one more time. They are given what, sir? 2 ledgers and 1 register. And 2 ledgers is classified into electronic credit ledger, electronic cash ledger. Another one is electronic liability register. So how many ledgers we have? 2 ledgers we have: electronic credit ledger, electronic cash ledger. And the register what we have is known as electronic liability register. So we need to understand exactly what does this particular ledger called electronic credit ledger contain, what does this ledger called electronic cash ledger contain, and what does the register called electronic liability register contains, so that we exactly understand how do we pay the tax and what is the manner and the mechanism involved in this concept of payment of tax. That is what we will talk. Let's talk about what is electronic credit ledger. Friends, the name only says it is electronic credit ledger. When I say credit, what is that we can see in that ledger? In that particular ledger, we can actually see our input tax credit on our inward supply. As I told you already, we don't use a word called purchase and sale. We'll use a word only called supply. Supply can be inward supply or can be outward supply. and we get input tax credit on all our inward supply. So now, whatever input tax credit we get on our inward supply is reflected in one ledger called electronic credit ledger. See, basically what government has done is that they wanted to develop a system where everything is automated, everything is matched, and everything is interlinked. That's the reason why they got this concept of ledgers online. See, there's nothing called journal, cash book, passbook here. There's only something called ledger. The ledger is being created there so that electronically you can look at your credit ledger and cash ledger. So what can you look at in your credit ledger? In credit ledger, you basically find details of your input tax credit. Details of what credit? Input tax credit. And this electronic credit ledger, whatever balance you have, you can use it for your output tax. Suppose a person has to pay tax by 20th of next month. Imagine, let me continue that example. There is one fellow called Tom. He has to pay tax by 20th of next month. So for, let's say, for April month, he has to pay tax by 20th of May. So when he has to pay tax by 20th of May, let's say he paid on 24th of May. Instead of paying tax on 20th of May, he paid on 24th of May. So technically, there is a default delay of how many days? Technically, there is a delay of how many days? 4 days there is a delay. And let me tell you friends, for this 4 days, we have to end up paying something called interest. At what rate and all, we'll talk separately. But he definitely has to pay something called interest. But my dear friends, let me tell you some interesting point. Whenever you have to pay something called as interest, or you have to pay something called as penalty, or you have to pay something called as late fees, these things cannot be paid using electronic credit ledger. Electronic credit ledger can be used. Electronic credit ledger can be used only and only for payment of output tax. Electronic credit ledger can be used only for payment of what, my dear friends? Output tax. So my example case, I clearly told Tom has to pay output tax of 1 lakh and he has GST input tax credit of 60,000. Can he use that for his output tax? Answer is yes. Answer is definitely yes. But if that 1 lakh is interest or penalty, then we cannot use the balance in electronic credit ledger. I repeat one more time. The balance in electronic credit ledger can be used only for payment of output tax, but not for any interest or penalties. If you have to pay any interest or any penalties or any other payment whatsoever other than output tax, we cannot pay that using electronic credit ledger. Are we understanding, my dear friends? So if you have to pay any output tax, only that can be paid using credit ledger, right? And whenever we talk about electronic credit ledger, the balance in electronic credit ledger can be used for payment of output tax. You definitely have to bear in your mind that important concept called input IGST. Use it for IGST, CGST, SGST. Input CGST for output CGST and IGST. Input SGST for output SGST and output IGST. Input IGST for output IGST, CGST, SGST. Input CGST for output CGST, IGST. Input SGST for output SGST and IGST. But you cannot use CGST for SGST, SGST for IGST. So it is very important that you keep this point in your mind while adjusting your credit with your output tax. So balance in electronic credit ledger can be used only for payment of output tax. Now, my dear friends, I'll give an interesting situation and a very interesting issue. Listen, my dear friends. There are two people. Let's say one person called Tom, one person called Jerry. Now, let's say for a second, Jerry is a lawyer. Jerry is a lawyer. Jerry has given some legal services to Tom for Tom's business purpose. We all know that this particular transaction is covered in reverse charge mechanism under section 9(3). What is that reverse charge mechanism? We all know very clearly. In general, supplier is liable to pay tax, but for transactions covered in reverse charge mechanism, receiver is liable to pay tax. So in case where Jerry is giving service to Tom, who is liable to pay GST is, let's say, Tom. In my example, whatever I told, when Jerry is a lawyer, he is giving legal services to Tom. Who is liable to pay GST is Tom, because of the concept of reverse charge mechanism. Let's say for a second, under RCM, Tom is liable to pay some 80,000 rupees. How much Tom is liable to pay? 80,000 rupees. And Tom has a balance of input tax credit in this ledger called electronic credit ledger. Tom has a balance in his electronic credit ledger. Let's say the balance is some 50,000. Now tell me friends, can we use that balance in electronic credit ledger for payment of this 80,000 tax under RCM? The answer is no. Definitely the answer is no. For the reason being, very clear reason, that is, sometime back only I told you that any balance in electronic credit ledger can be used only for payment of output tax. Any balance in electronic credit ledger can be used only for payment of output tax. Now tell me friends, when Tom is paying tax under reverse charge mechanism, for Tom, is it output tax or input tax? Definitely it's input tax, because Tom has not given service to Jerry. Tom has actually taken service from Jerry. Jerry gave service to Tom, and from Tom's point of view, Tom has taken service. But Tom is liable to pay tax because of the concept of what? Reverse charge mechanism. But that is actually not an output tax. That is what tax? Input tax. And we cannot use input tax credit for payment of input tax, because of the fact being very clear that balance in electronic credit ledger can be used only for payment of output tax. I believe that we have got some very good clarity on this wonderful concept called electronic credit ledger. Now we'll also understand what is electronic cash ledger. So friends, we have discussed some interesting issue as to how do we set off the credit, especially with regard to the manner of utilization of credit. How do we set off? We discussed very clearly that there can be a possibility where there can be input IGST, there can be input CGST, or there can be input SGST. And we clearly discussed that input IGST can be used for output IGST, then for CGST, then for SGST. And input CGST for what? Input CGST for output CGST, then for output IGST. And SGST for output SGST, and then for IGST. And we also clearly discussed the concept that we cannot use CGST for SGST or SGST for CGST. So the most user friendly out of all this is IGST, because we observe very clearly IGST can be used for anything and anything can be used for IGST. That is why we call it as the most user friendly. And we discussed that the concept of IGST will come only in case of interstate supply, whereas in case of intrastate supply we have the concept of CGST and SGST. Correct, my dear friends? Now to understand this better, we'll take some examples and figure out what exactly we are trying to talk about, manner of utilization of credit and how do we set off. Are we understanding, my dear friends? Right. Now listen. Let's say there is one particular person called Mr. Dhoni. Who is there, friends? Dhoni. There is a person called Mr. Dhoni, and there is a person called Mr. Kohli. There is a person called Dhoni, person called Kohli. Let's say for a second, Dhoni is a registered person in Jharkhand. Kohli is a registered person in Delhi. Kohli is what person? Registered person in Delhi. And let's say there is one person called Mr. Sachin. And this guy Sachin is a registered person in Maharashtra. So there are three persons called Dhoni, Kohli, Sachin. Dhoni is registered in Jharkhand, Kohli registered in Delhi, Sachin registered in Maharashtra. Now let's say Kohli supplied some goods. I repeat one more time. Let's say Dhoni supplied some goods at a value of 1 lakh rupees to Kohli. The same goods Kohli supplied to Sachin at a value of 1.2 lakhs. Indirectly, Kohli is making a profit of 20,000. Now, let's say for a second, my dear friends, GST rate is at the rate of 18%. So, what is GST rate? 18%. When the GST rate is 18%, my dear friends, I already told you that we have two types of supplies called intrastate supply, interstate supply. Intrastate supply, what do we charge? CGST and SGST. Interstate supply, what do we charge? IGST. Correct, my dear friends? Now, Dhoni is in Jharkhand. He supplied goods to Kohli in Delhi. So, in this particular case, what will come is, on this 1 lakh, we will charge IGST at the rate of 18%. And when Kohli is supplied to Sachin 1.2 lakhs, on this also we will charge at the rate of 18%, and that will be IGST. That will be what, my dear friends? IGST. Now, let's talk about the tax liability for Mr. Kohli. When I talk about the tax liability of Mr. Kohli, my dear friends, what I need to understand is what is the output tax, what is the input tax credit, so that we can set off and pay the balance. Correct? Now tell me guys, for Kohli, what is the output tax? The output tax will be what, my dear friends? 1,20,000 into 18%. How much will be 1,20,000 into 18%? This comes to around 21,600, which is nothing but 1,20,000 into 18%. And this 21,600 is IGST. Yes or no, my dear friends? Now tell me, sir. Whatever Kohli paid when Kohli procured from Dhoni at 1 lakh rupees at 18%, that 18% whatever Dhoni collected from Kohli will become input tax credit. Other words, ITC for whom, sir? Kohli. And that ITC is what? IGST. Now tell me, friends, can we take IGST credit and set up with IGST? Definitely 101% answer is yes, because IGST can be taken as credit and we can use it for IGST, next for CGST, next for SGST. So can we take credit of IGST and use for IGST? The answer is definitely yes. Now, so from the output tax, I'll reduce input tax credit, which is again IGST. How much is that? 1 lakh into 18%. 1 lakh into 18% comes to 18,000. 18,000. So output tax is 21,600. Input tax credit is 18,000. Net effect, the balance to be paid is 3,600. This is to be paid by whom, sir? By Mr. Kohli. This 18,000 is what is taken as credit. 21,600 is the output tax. From 21,600 we will reduce the input tax credit of 18,000 and pay the balance amount of 3,600. That is what is the manner of mechanism of credit. Now let's take a couple of more examples to understand the things better. Are we ready? Right. Now let's say there is one person called Mr. A for simplicity, one fellow called Mr. B. Okay, now let's say A is a registered person in one state known as Telangana. B is also a registered person. I repeat one more time. A is a registered person in Telangana and B is also a registered person. Let's say he registered person in Pune, which is a part of Maharashtra. Correct, friends? Now let's say A supplied some services to B. A supplied some what? Services to B, where the value of services is, let us say, 8 lakh rupees. 8 lakh rupees. And this all happened in the month of April. And in the same month, B has supplied some goods at a value of 10 lakhs. At a value of 10 lakhs. Where the GST rate is, let us say, 18%. On 8 lakhs also, GST is at the rate of 18%. And B has supplied goods to one person called Mr. C. And this particular person is a registered person in Mumbai, which is also a part of Maharashtra. So you have to observe very clearly that A is in Telangana, B is in Pune, Maharashtra, C is in Mumbai, that is also a part of Maharashtra. So now, please understand, there are three people, one supplier called A, one supplier called B, one person called C. So A is supplying to B, B is supplying to C. A is where? Telangana. B is where? Pune. C is where? Mumbai. Correct, my dear friends? Now, as I already told you, my dear friends, when we talk about this set-off of credit, there is nothing in GST law that use credit of goods and use only for goods. Use credit of service only for service. There is nothing like that. We can use credit of goods for services. We can use credit of services for goods. Happily you can use. But you have to follow only the concept of manner of utilization of credit. But law never told use credit of goods only for goods, use credit of service only for service. We can use credit of goods for services. We can use credit of service for goods. That's happily allowed. But that should be related to the same month. So I wrote very clearly here that all this happened in the month of April. Correct? Now, if I look at the liability of one person called Mr. B. Mr. B. Tell me guys. Now, for B, when you look at the story of B, where is B? Maharashtra. Where is C? Maharashtra. So in that case, the output tax what will come for this GST will be CGST and SGST, where CGST will be 9%, SGST will be 9%. So friends, there is a output tax of CGST and SGST. Input tax credit of what? IGST. Correct? So if you look at from the point of view of B, the credit what he has, that credit is what? IGST. And output tax is what? CGST and SGST. Friends, tell me now, can we take credit of IGST and use it for CGST, SGST? Yes. But the fundamental point is that IGST credit, first we'll use it for IGST, then for CGST, then for SGST. Correct? So now, how do we set off the tax liability of B? Let's say, my dear friends, come on. I take three columns now. What are the columns I have? Particulars column. And I have tax to be paid is SGS, CGST and SGST. I have taken three columns called particulars, CGST and SGST. Tell me guys, what is my output tax I have to pay? I have to pay tax on 10 lakhs. 10 lakhs at what rate? 18% total. 9% is CGST, 9% is SGST. Correct? So it comes to how much? 90,000 of CGST, 90,000 of SGST. And tell me friends, what is the input tax credit I have? I have input tax credit of IGST. And what is the credit I have? I have credit on 8 lakhs into 18%. 8 lakhs into 18% comes to 1 lakh 1,44,000. So what is my credit? 1,44,000. This is my input tax credit. So out of this 1,44,000, I will use 90,000 towards CGST. I'll use 90,000 towards what? CGST. So tell me friends now, out of 1,44,000, what has been used? 90,000 has been used. So what is the difference between 144 minus 90,000? 54,000. That 54,000 I will use it towards SGST. So when I calculate my net tax, CGST will be nil, CGST will be nil, SGST will be 90,000 minus 54,000, 90,000 minus 54,000, which comes to 36,000. This is the manner of utilization of credit which we are supposed to follow, for the reason by being very clear that IGST can be used for IGST, CGST, SGST, and CGST can be used for CGST and IGST. SGST can be used for SGST and IGST, and it is mandatory that we follow this concept of manner of utilization of credit. So friends, we have taken a couple of examples to understand exactly how do we set off the credit, and keep that point in mind always, the manner of utilization of credit. Let's discuss a couple of questions from RTP May 2018. In RTP May 2018, let's look at the second question. Very interesting. Consider that please. Come on. Tirupati traders, there is somebody known as Tirupati traders, and this particular person called Tirupati traders is a registered person who is a supplier of goods, pays CGST or SGST or IGST as the case may be under regular scheme. It furnishes following details for a tax period. Value of intrastate supply is 12,000. How much is intrastate supply? 12,000. And value of intrastate supply purchase of goods is 10,000. So there is a value of intrastate supply. So basically there is a outward supply of 12,000 and there is inward supply of how much? 10,000. And the question they told value of intrastate supply of goods, value of intrastate purchase of goods. When both are intra and intra, what will come is CGST and SGST. And below they gave rate of CGST is 9%, SGST is 9%, IGST is 18%. And both inward supply, outward supply are exclusive of tax wherever applicable. And below they also gave all the necessary conditions for availing credit have been fulfilled. And they asked, compute net GST payable by Tirupati traders during the given tax period, assuming that there is no opening balance of input tax credit, and make assumptions wherever required. So if you observe, my dear friends, there is no opening ITC, correct? They clearly told there is no opening ITC. But on inward supply of 10,000, what you have done, you would have definitely paid CGST 9%, SGST 9%. This whatever we have paid will become our input tax credit. And on outward supply, we have to pay output tax, and that is also CGST and SGST. Because in question they clearly told it is intrastate supply, correct? Now, in the question they also asked what is the net CST payable. That is what we need to find out. So let's do that. So friends, let's prepare a small table so understand the things better and make the things much more comfortable for us. So what are the columns I will take? Come on, my dear friends, tell me. What are the columns I will take? First column will be particulars, CGST, SGST. Otherwise, in the top row, we are talking about what is our output, what we have to pay. Tell me guys. what is my output tax? If you observe, my dear friends, my output tax is on 12,000, I have to pay 9% and 9%. Chalo guys, what will be the figure of 12,000 into 9%? 12,000 into 9% comes to 1080. And obviously, we need not do one more time calculation for SGST, because if CGST is 1080, SGST also will be 1080. Correct, my dear friends? Now, what is the credit figures I have? I have a credit of CGST. I have also a credit of IGST. Come on, friends. Now, what is the credit I have? If I reduce my input tax credit, what is the CGST credit I have? 10,000 into 9%, which comes to how much? 900. What is my SGST credit I have? 900. So if I look at my final figures, what is my net tax? My CGST will be 180, SGST will be 180. That's my net tax. Straight simple calculation. So the only thing what we have to bear in mind is that IGST can be used for IGST, CGST, SGST. CGST can be used for CGST and IGST. SGST can be used for SGST and IGST. Bear these points in mind, your answers will come. Getting clarity, friends? Now, let's move on. Let's move on to the discussion. So in this problem, my dear friends, so what is the final net tax? 180 and 180, that is what we need to pay. Let's look at in the same RTP only, there is one more second question, second bit, that is what we'll talk. Listen, Govind, a registered supplier, is engaged in providing services in the neighboring state from its registered office located in Mumbai. So he is basically in Mumbai and is providing services in neighboring state. So neighboring state is providing means technically we call it as interstate supply, and we'll charge what? IGST. Correct? Now, he has furnished the following details in respect of inward and outward supplies during a period. Interstate supply of service, they gave the figure of 1,80,000, and receipt of goods and services within the state is 1 lakh. I already told you that there is no concept called set of goods only with goods, service only with service. We can happily set off goods with service, service with goods. There is no problem there. Correct? Next. They gave the rates of CGST 9%, SGST 9%, IGST 18%. Both inward and outward supply are exclusive of tax. All necessary conditions for availing credit have been fulfilled. Correct, sir? So, my dear friends, if you observe carefully in the question, they asked compute net GST payable. My output is what, sir? My output is IGST, because in question they told interstate supply, and my input is CGST and SGST. So tell me guys, come on, can I use CGST credit for IGST? Yes. Can I use SGST credit for IGST? Yes. So we observe clearly, friends, my output is what in this case? Only IGST. So I will take only one column here, and I'll write what now? Come on, particulars, and I will take my output tax, that is what, sir? IGST. Come on, my dear friends, tell me now. I will particulars column, I will take the story as what is output tax payable. Come, what is payable? 1,80,000, 1,80,000 into 18%. How much it comes to? 1,80,000 into 18% comes to 32,400. How much it is coming to, my dear friends? 32,400. From that, I will reduce ITC of CGST. How much is ITC of CGST? ITC of CGST is 1 lakh into 9%, which comes to 9,000. And my ITC of SGST is again 1 lakh into 9%, again it comes to 9,000. Obviously, my dear friends, when CGST is 9,000, SGST is bound to be 9,000. Correct? So tell me, friends, what is my net IGST payable? My net IGST payable turns out to what? 32,400 minus 9,000 minus 9,000, which comes to how much, my dear friends? 14,400. That is what is my net IGST payable, which comes to 14,400. But in exam, when you solve this question, it is important that you write couple of notes. What is the note we will write? First one, CGST credit can be used for CGST, then for IGST. SGST credit can be used first for SGST and then for IGST. And in this question, CGST credit can be used for CGST, but there is no output CGST. So I will use it for what? IGST. SGST credit, we'll use it for what first? SGST, then for what? IGST. But we don't have output SGST, so directly I used it for IGST. I hope we are understanding, my dear friends. Everybody clear with that, sir?